Corruption in Kenya. Corruption in the government of Kenya has a history which spans the era of the founding president Jomo Kenyatta to Daniel Arap Moi's KANU, Mwai Kibaki's PNU government, and the current Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party government. In the Corruption Perceptions Index 2020, Kenya is ranked 124th out of 180 countries for corruption, tied with Bolivia, Kyrgyzstan, Mexico, and Pakistan. Least corrupt countries are at the top of the list. Most bribes paid by urban residents in Kenya are fairly small, but large ones are also taken. Bribes worth over 50,000 Kenyan shillings (EUR 600, US $450) account for 41% of the total value. There is also corruption on a larger scale, with each of the last two regimes being criticized for their involvement. Despite market reforms, several business surveys reveal that business corruption is still widespread and that companies frequently encounter demands for bribes and informal payments to get things done in Kenya, a trend that has contributed to an increased cost of doing business in Kenya. The public procurement sector in Kenya suffers widespread corruption and is the leading form of graft in the public service and always at the center of all major corruption scandals. The use of agents to facilitate business operations and transactions in Kenya is widespread and poses a risk for companies, particularly at the market entry and business startup stage. Despite positive developments, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission (KACC) was disbanded and replaced by the newly instated Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) on 5 September 2011. Observers describe the new agency as superficial. It is observed that in Kenya bribery and nepotism as most prevalent forms of corruption, according to surveys carried out. On 22 July 2019, Kenya's Finance Minister Henry Rotich became the country's first sitting minister to be arrested for corruption. This followed an order by the Director of Public Prosecution (DPP) Noordin Haji for the arrest and prosecution of Mr. Rotich and his principal secretary PS Kamau Thugge, among other top government officials over there. In 2017, the U.S. government cut health funding to Kenya over widespread corruption in the Ministry of Health. UZ suspended $21 in funding for activities carried out by a number of the ministry's departments over corruption and weak accounting procedures. Before 1990, the first corruption incident in Kenya is widely regarded as the Maize scandal of 1965. Paul Njay, an independence hero and at the time the Minister for Marketing and Cooperatives, was involved in a maize scandal that caused a national maize shortage. The Commission of Maize Inquiry, the first of its kind in independent Kenya, found that Njay's wife, Emma, was getting preferential treatment for her business Emma Stores Uhuru Millers of Kangundo, through which she bought maize directly from farmers, which was illegal at the time. Between 1986 and 1991, the construction of the Turkwel hydroelectric power station was riddled with claims of corruption. The dam was eventually built at 3 times the estimated cost, twice the allocated amount, and producing energy significantly below capacity. Turkwel Dam Scandal. The Turkwel Gorge hydroelectric dam project was commissioned in 1986 and completed by French company Spy Batignolles in 1991. The construction of the dam is one of the controversial projects that characterized former President Mwai's administration in the late 80s and early 90s. According to media reports, the project was riddled by allegations over pricing, lack of environmental assessment and feasibility study, and failure to have an open tendering process that saw the contract awarded to the French company. In 1986, Achim Kratz, then European Commission delegate to Kenya, in an internal memo that was leaked to the Financial Times, alleged that Kenya's failure to have an open tendering process resulted in the government paying more than double the cost. The blame on the alleged corruption surrounding the dam was blamed on 2 government officials, then Minister of Energy Nicholas B. Watt and then Finance Minister George Saitoti. In 2000, the permanent secretary to the cabinet, and head of public service to the Kenyan government, Dr. Richard Leakey declassified the Turkwel Dam files, making them publicly accessible. The information which falsified the graft allegations raised against the project, including the lack of an open tendering process, was also made public in Hansard parliamentary debates of June 8, 2000. The late President Mwai had appointed Dr. Leakey in 1999 to head the civil service and help with reform the corrupt civil service and privatization of state-owned companies, but Leakey stepped down in 2001. In March 2002, in High Court Case No. 2143 of 1999, Nicholas B. Watt successfully sued the People's Daily newspaper over libel after the paper published a story accusing him of colluding with the French firm to award it the contract in disregard of due process. Justice Oluwak awarded him 10 M in damages. 1990–1999. The longest-running scandal is the Goldenberg scandal, where the Kenyan government subsidized exports of gold, paying exporters in Kenyan shillings sh 35% over their foreign currency earnings. In this case, the gold was smuggled from Congo. The Goldenberg scandal cost Kenya the equivalent of more than 10% of the country's annual GDP. A $360 million helicopter servicing contract in South Africa. Military officers had argued that the contract was too extravagant and servicing the helicopters could be done locally. Kenya Air Force KAF went ahead to spend $108 million as a down payment for servicing the Puma helicopters, whose tail number is logged as 418 at Denel Aviation, a South African firm. 2000–2009. 2010–present. In October 2012, allegations surfaced that top Foreign Affairs Ministry officials ignored land offered by Japan that could have saved the country loss of $1.1 billion. The scandal led to the resignation of the then Foreign Affairs Minister Moses Wetangula. In October 2010, the Department of Defense uncovered a bribery scandal involving senior Kenya Defense Force officers in the corrupt $1.6 billion purchase of armored personnel carriers from South African company OTT Technologies (TI). Minister of Defense Yusuf Haji retired several high-ranking officers in January 2011 accused of taking bribes by OTT Technologies (TI) Limited, and the matter was referred for further investigation to Parliament. The September 2012 report on military modernization programs by the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations found that the irregular procurement of the Puma M26 armored carriers had violated that OTT Technologies, TI Ltd's business partners in Kenya, had been identified by the U.S. government as being involved in international. In 2014, the same company was accused by the government of Mozambique of irregular tax and export control activities in the transport of similar armored carriers through Mozambique for onward trafficking into Africa. Mega corruption scandals hit Kenya in 2018. The country lost over $13 billion to graft deals in key state departments such as the National Youth Service, Kenya Pipeline Company, National Cereals and Produce Board, National Health Insurance Fund, and HIF, and shoddy land transactions at the Ministry of Lands. Mohammed Abdallah Swazuri, the chairman of National Land Commission, and Atanas Kariuki Maina, managing director of the Kenya Railways Corporation, were among 18 officials, businesspeople and companies arrested on corruption charges involving land allocation for the $3 billion flagship Nairobi-Mombasa Railway. In February 2019, the Ministry of Lands headed by Lands CS Farida Karoni could not account for the loss of $20 billion taxpayers' money. The details regarding this saga was delivered by the country's Auditor General Edward Auko. This report indicated a lot of discrepancies and inaccuracies in the ministry's 30 June 2018 financial statement. In July 2019, the Director of Public Prosecution, Noordin Haji, uncovered a mega graft scandal on the procurement of 2 dams. The graft case led to the publics of Kenya losing $19 billion. The scandal involved high-profile people in the government such as the then CS of Treasury Henry Rotich and 28 others. Rotich, his principal secretary, The chief executive of Kenya's Environmental Authority and other 28 accused handed themselves into police custody after being criminally charged with corruption. The allocated budget of SH 19,714,366,991 that was lost through graft was meant to construct two dams, Arror and Kimwarer dams in Elgeyo-Marakwet counties. On 6 December 2019, Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko was arrested on multiple corruption charges. On 11 August 2020. Nairobi County Assembly Speaker Beatrice Elachi resigned. On 21 December 2020, recently elected Nairobi County Assembly Speaker Benson Muchura was sworn in as acting Nairobi governor 4 days after Sonko was impeached and removed from office. At the time of Muchura's swearing in as acting governor, which he will hold for at least 60 days, Nairobi did not have a deputy governor as well. On 14 January 2020, Kenya officially replaced Rotich with Labour Secretary Uhuru Yatani. On 9 December 2020, it was confirmed by the Kenyan news agency that the National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee (NACC) was in the process of strengthening its collaboration with other crime-fighting agencies, including those in Kenya's government. The group had national government administrative officers in Gao in hopes they would support the County Anti-Corruption Civil Oversight Committee (KACC). The day before, Winnie Gachu, who serves in Kenya's government as the Chief Administrative Secretary (CAS) in the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Justice, confirmed in a press conference that she had met with members of KACC to strengthen relations. On 11 December 2020, Kenya's Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) released a statement confirming that Robert Pavel Oimik, the Director General of Kenya's Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, was arrested and taken into police custody on charges of demanding 200,000 Kenyan shillings $1795 COVID-19 funds. In August 2020, activists in Kenya embarked on countrywide protests to demand full accountability of all the COVID-19 funds from the government following media reports of misappropriation of the funds. NARC party leader and human rights defender Martha Karua was the first leader to come out publicly call on the President Kenyatta's government to provide full disclosure and accountability of the COVID-19 funds and equipment from all sources, including loans, grants, donations, and in-kind support both locally and internationally. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has been investigating an alleged procurement scandal at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority (KEMSA). Anti-corruption initiatives. Despite corruption being rampant in Kenya, the country has had an anti-corruption legislation dating back to 1956, the Prevention of Corruption Act Cap 65, which was in operation from August 1956 to May 2003 when the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, No. 3, became. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has also provided a framework for reporting cases of graft in the government and the public sector. The reports can be reported in person via phone call or email at the EACC headquarters or any of the Commission's regional offices across the counties or at the Huduma Center. Whistleblowers can also file reports anonymously. Since 2003, EACC has secured 293 convictions in court and recovered assets worth SH 26.65 billion acquired from corruption. Wealth declaration for civil servants. In an effort to curb corruption and promote ethics and integrity in the public service, all senior civil servants in Kenya are required to declare their wealth. The Wealth Declaration for public officials is backed by the Public Officer Ethics Act, 2003, which sets out 1-year jail term or 1 million fine for those who fail to submit a declaration or clarification. The declarations are meant to detect and prevent corrupt practices, evaluate potential conflicts of interest, promote transparency and accountability, and increase public confidence in government. The Wealth Declaration forms have helped EACC nab corrupt public officers, especially in the graft-ridden police service. In 2015, President Uhuru Kenyatta in a bold move to tame the massive corruption that has tainted his first term in office, asked all public officials who had adversely been named in a graft report handed to him by the EACC to step aside and pave way for investigations. The officials named in the report consisted of members of the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament, MPs, heads of parastatals, and various principal secretaries. Then, Lands Cabinet Secretary Charity Angelou was among the leaders mentioned in the report, who stepped down following President Kenyatta's directive. Secretary to the Cabinet Francis Kaimimia, Labour Minister Kazungu Kambai, Transport and Infrastructure CS Ng Michael Kamau, Transport PS Nduvumili and Energy, and Petroleum CS Davis Churcher also resigned. Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions (OD). The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, whose core functions include prosecution of those charged by the police and other investigative agencies with criminal offences, has also helped in the war against graft. The current DPP, Noordin Haji, has particularly introduced a new vigor in the fight against corruption since he assumed the office in 2018. Senior government officials, including sitting ministers, governors, principal secretaries, and MP linked to corruption scandals, have been arrested and prosecuted on the DPP orders. Some of the governors who have been charged with misappropriation of public funds include Migori Governor Zachary Akoth, Obudo Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko, Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, Samburu Governor Moses Kassane, and Tharaka Nithi Governor Mafomi Njuki. In 2019, Noordin Haji also ordered the arrest and prosecution of former Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, who became Kenya's first sitting minister to be arrested for corruption. In July 2020, Haji's office issued new rules for prosecutors on preferring charges against suspects in corruption and other criminal cases. The new rules outline the thresholds that prosecutors must check to see if the potential case either passes the evidence test, the public interest test, or both, and only pursue cases with realistic prospects of conviction. Activists. The civil society in Kenya has been at the forefront of fighting graft in the country. Renowned activists like Boniface Mwangi, Wanjiri Nduru, and Akia Amtaha have always put the government on the spot over corruption and often lead anti-corruption protests. The Kenya police has often been condemned by citizens and human rights groups for meting out excessive force on protesters and infringing on their rights. Strong institutions. According to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Kenya is losing an estimated KSHS 608.0 billion, 7.8% of Kenya's GDP to corruption annually. Reduced corruption is therefore crucial for the country's development. Sustainable Development Goal 16 advocates for justice and strong institutions as essential elements to every democratic society. Targets 16.3 and 16.5 aim to promote the rule of law at the national and international levels and ensure equal access to justice for all, and substantially reduce corruption and bribery. The Sustainable Development Goals are consistent with Kenya's primary development blueprint, the Kenya Vision 2030, and President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four development agenda. Security contracts. Listed in Gathongo's dossier are a number of companies that won security-related contracts. Anti-corruption authorities. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) was established after Kenya's President Mwai Kibaki signed the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act on 29 August 2011. The EACC replaced the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission (KACC). Previously, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission (KACC) was established in April 2003 to replace the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority after Parliament enacted new legislation.